Recently, the World Health Organization recognized burnout as an occupational phenomenon. What causes it and how can it be prevented? Joining us this morning is Ruben Chamont. He is the founder and CEO of Intentional Work Communities, which is a consulting firm helping companies in the Philippines build workplace cultures. Well, good morning, Ruben, and welcome to the Philippines, and welcome to New Day.
Thank
you.
Well,
you've been here for quite a while. So, you know, in the news, we've been hearing a lot about it. In other countries, burnout is a phenomenon that's been on the rise during the last 15 years or so. But compared to other countries, how much of an issue is burnout for us here in the Philippines?
So I've been here for 5 years, started this, operating this company for about 4 years and a half. I could say that the level of burnout in the Philippines is not as high as, in the West, in the US, even in Asia. However, I have noticed that, for example, in the BPO sector, you have in those kind of industries, they are importing management practices from the West, and you can see the level of burnout raising in those areas. So I would say if Philippines do not pay attention, burnout might raise.
So you mentioned BPO. So would you rank them as the highest in terms of, having the most burnout experiences?
Studies in the Philippines about burnout are not as much developed as in the West. So it's I cannot really have bring figures here on the table. But obviously, I've been working myself with clients in the BPO sector, and definitely when you work at night shift, and then you have very tough deadlines on timelines, then of course it's going to generate burnout more.
Okay. Now my next question would be based on your conversations. You've been here for a few years now. Some employees, what would you think would be the main cause when it comes to burnout?
Okay, so basically I've been sent in about 40 organizations over the last 10 years. And the first thing is that work doesn't have to be something that creates stress, that creates anxiety and burnout. Work, I've seen many companies where people can find meaning, purpose, growth, belongingness in their work. And when they do, they start loving their work. They start, to feel, think, and act as entrepreneurs. They start to be excited about their work and, serve their customers. So you can be really productive without being stressed. However, what I found, so that the second thing I found is that for most people, unfortunately, work is something, they don't have a fulfilling relationship to work. They have either a frustrating relationship to work or a toxic relationship to work. So, what creates a toxic relationship to work? Well, there are many factors, but some classic factors. One is crazy hours, overtime. When you work long hours and then you go back to home and you don't disconnect, you check your emails over dinner. Basically, before you would work from 9 to 5, and after 5, you have a life. Okay. Today, a lot of people, they don't properly have a life because their head is used for their work all the time, and they are worrying about their work all the time, so they don't get to disconnect, to really renew. And that becomes where burnout can creep in when people over months they don't renew and they cannot disconnect. But that's only one factor. Another factor that is really often happening is micromanagement. When people they don't have control of how they do their work, and they have to always they're kind of used as robots for their work. It's really stressful because first you don't derive so much pleasure and satisfaction outside of your work, and it's micromanagement is one of the factors. So if you combine those factors and then day after day you have this kind of toxic relationship to work, after some time your core needs are going to be attacked, and then it's going to reveal in your health conditions, psychological health, but also mental health.
Okay, so what would be the basic symptoms of somebody going through a burnout instance?
Well, so burnout, basically burnout, the basic symptoms, the World Health Organization mentioned, for example, a lack of professional efficacy. So, you're less productive in what you're doing. exhaustion, so you really like physical exhaustion, and then a lack of basically motivation or even cynicism about your work. But that's basically the end of the process. You know, that's when the symptoms are fully grown. But in between, you know, it will take some time. But basically, what I found is companies have a lot to do to make sure that work is, you know, a win-win situation between people and their companies, and not a lose-lose situation like, you know, like this. So, for example, well, there is a lot of new research in a field called positive organizational psychology, and that new research really shed a light on how we can better manage people. There is one research about intrinsic motivation, right? So intrinsic motivation. It's like when people are motivated by the work itself and not by factors outside of the work. So the research shows that when people are intrinsically motivated, basically they are more creative, more productive, more persistent, more cooperative as well. And that basically anyone can grow intrinsic motivation for their work if they find 3 core ingredients in their work. So one is they need to feel competent, a feeling of competence. So making sure your people really feel competent. In many companies, and that link to burnout, we give people unattainable targets where people are constantly trying to, you know, chase after unattainable targets, and at the end of the day, they never feel the sense of satisfaction of achievement, and that's a mistake because if you give that sense of achievement, people are going to feel competent and grow intrinsic motivation, and they're going to be better at what they're doing. That's the first one, competence. Next one is feeling of autonomy. When people have the feeling of using their own values, their own understanding of the world, and make decisions, it creates that feeling of freedom, where people can do their work and it creates satisfaction, and people love their work and they do their work even better. And the last one is relatedness, belongingness, right? If you're part of a team where you really feel cared for in that team, and well, you will feel a sense of trust, a sense of self-esteem, and it will create that sense of intrinsic motivation. And work is going to become something really pleasurable and something where you can be productive and at the same time have a sense of well-being.
Okay, so this is definitely something that the employers should take into consideration and really notice the well-being of their employees. But right off the bat, if people are just watching right now, quick steps. I mean, give them what, more time out, or?
Okay, quick step. Well, I would say, well,
aside from the 3 things that you did mention earlier, yeah?
I would say
disconnect.
Yeah, so for people, disconnecting is very important. Making sure that, you know, create an encouraging, you know, ambience where making sure people feel supported, encouraged, and values is very important because it really decreases the level of stress.
You know, it sounds like a regular relationship. Like you have with a person. I mean, your relationship with an employer should also be the same relationship that you feel with your loved ones. You
exactly.
Feel validated.
Well, the difference here is that relationship is, you know, you have a lot in your control. But what we realize so far in companies is that many times managers really want to do well, but they don't have a lot of, you know, abilities in their control. So that's why I'm really suggesting that CEOs and leadership team should create the right conditions, the right governance practices, organizational practices, HR practices, management practices to really support the managers to create that kind of environment.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all that information that we were able to gather in, and it really stems down to the businesses and the, you know, the corporations trying to, you know, give the best to their employees. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
On your day, that was W.H.O from the Intentional Work Communities.